Hello. Welcome to Discovering Creativity program. And my name is Paulina. And today we are interviewing to Annette Kendall. And the main topic is facilitating creative processes. So welcome, Annette. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you, Paulina. I am very good. I am based at the University of Missouri here in Columbia, Missouri. We have a heat wave at the moment, so we're quite hot, but air conditioning is making it fine. Where are you based?
So we are in San Miguel de Allende, Guanajuato, which is located in the center of Mexico. And to be honest, the weather is changing because it used to be pretty hot in August still, but it's getting a little bit chilly in the afternoon. Yeah, it's making everybody a little bit confused.
What do you call, what temperature is chilly for you?
Okay, yes, right. I don't know, 21 degrees.
Oh, yeah,
19.
Yes. Then I'm like, I need a sweater.
A sweater in the afternoon, exactly. So, Annette, I would like the people who will watch or are watching or the podcast and listening to get them to feel a little bit closer to you, to get to know you. So, and to connect more today. So I would like you to tell us who is Annette Kendall.
Oh, my goodness.
I mean, it's pretty wide, but I think you will describe it better than I do.
For sure. So I think we are all complex human beings, but who I am. So in terms of my job,
exactly,
I am an assistant extension professor at the University of Missouri. And so my work involves working with communities throughout Missouri, rural communities, to facilitate programs and create programs that help them achieve economic prosperity. So in rural areas across the globe, we have this problem of, small rural towns, kind of people moving away, businesses closing. And so my work has always been in that area. To your topic at hand, though, creativity. So I am someone who is highly creative, but I didn't know I was, right? So throughout my career, I haven't always been at the university. I have a PhD in agricultural economics, but my background is in business and building businesses. And I used to do a lot of speaking. And when people would introduce me, they would say, and this is Annette Kendall, and she thinks like no one else I've ever met. And I would be like, what do you mean? What do you mean I think differently? And it was kind of, it's sometimes it's strange to hear how people frame you, right? It's for all of us, how people perceive us. And I used to always think that my brain was upside down because I would be in a group or we would try to solve a problem. And what I would see is the obvious connections between things nobody else could see. And so I would be like, hey, this is obvious. Can you not see this? And the rest of the people would say, oh my gosh, that's so innovative or creative. But to me, it wasn't that creative. It was just obvious. However, things that are obvious to other people, I don't see, right? My brain goes to very novel connections. And so it turns out that later on in life, I found out that I have ADHD, but I'm also autistic. And so we know people who are, I always tell my students, if you are lucky enough, and I mean this in a kind of flippant way because neurodivergent conditions have a lot of challenges for sure, but we know that people whose brains are wired differently have a greater capacity for creativity because their brains make connections that other people don't, other people's brains don't. We see different things because we experience the world in a different way. So that's what gets me really excited. And I get to do a lot of that work and work with neurodivergent people in the work that I do at university.
Okay, and that's pretty interesting because I found there are more there's you can find more information now. I don't know if it's the right one, right? But and people are realizing they have ADHD and they are maybe they don't know how to diagnose themselves or where to go because exactly they might feel different, but they don't know they are neurodivergent. So there, that was you probably find out this a while ago, but there is something that you can remember that make you, realize that you were different. That maybe for other people, it might make them click or help them. Like, okay, I'm not. Because you can feel probably like left out. You might think you're not normal, but not in the right way. So, maybe just sharing what helped you to realize, to start thinking, okay, what's going on here?
That's a very good question, Paulina, and great insight there, because what you're describing is exactly how it was. And so it is very lonely to be somebody in the room who says, no, I think the answer is A. And everybody else in that room is like, no, it's B, right? But you're like, oh my God, no, it's totally wrong. And so on so many different levels, it can be isolating professionally, and also socially, right? Because then you might be seen in school as well. And so I don't have an undergraduate degree, and I didn't even graduate high school. I got asked to leave high school because I would be always asking the question, but why? Why is that the answer? But why? And so sometimes you can be seen as a troublemaker or argumentative or combative because of the frustration that you have, right? And then socially, so we know that sometimes some people who are neurodivergent get way more excited about reading books and learning and maybe working on things or painting, doing things with their hands than they do with spending time with other people. And society today says that if you don't want to socialize with people and have lots of friends, then there must be something wrong with you. And you must be depressed or you must be sad. But what a lot of people don't understand is that the joy that some of us can get just from spending a whole weekend reading books, like, oh my gosh, that is much more fun than spending time with people where it might be a lot of small talk. And I want to talk about deep things, right? So to your question of, like, I always knew that I was kind of different and relationships were problematic for me because I can be very direct and I don't want to be rude. I'm not trying to hurt people's feelings, not at all. And I'm very upset when I hear that I am, but I get very passionate about the things I'm talking about. What happened was that when I came to the university, there were people that knew about neurodivergence and actually, after talking to me, sent me some articles and said, you might want to look at this. And I read it, and it was articles about how autism shows up in women, and it is very different for women than boys. And after reading that, I thought, oh, wow, that's interesting, but there's no way I'm autistic because the way I do things is the way everybody does things. There are online kind of tests and things that you can take to get an idea of whether you might be on the spectrum. They're definitely not considered, you shouldn't, they're not diagnostic, right?
Okay.
But they can give you an idea. So I went through and I was like, oh, the way I'm answering these questions, everybody thinks like that. And then at the end it said, no, it seems like you are very definitely have autism, on the autism spectrum, or whatever the words that we use. And I was like, oh, what? But this is a few years ago now. And I have to say that actually having that understanding and then doing more reading made me go, oh, that's why that friendship didn't work out. Or that's why I have problems with this. And so a lot of people in my life have said, I don't know, I can't tell whether you're really, really smart and sometimes you fake being stupid, or whether you're actually really stupid and sometimes you say smart things but you don't realize. Because I can't multitask, right? So I can't listen to podcasts while I'm driving. I'll end up in a different town, right? So many times. I can't run and listen to podcasts. I follow. It's very hard for me to get everything ready for a meal at the same time. To do that math of when I need to put everything on to get the vegetables, the meat, everything prepared at the same time is like I'm doing rocket science. But I can do very hard math, and that's easy, right? So simple things are hard for me, and hard things are kind of seem more intuitive for me. And so every time I speak about this, now I always have women that contact me afterwards and say, oh, I might be neurodivergent or autistic, because what we women tend to do is that we will watch the popular girls and we will say, oh, that's how you be friends. That's how you dress. That's how you talk. And then we'll mimic them, right? I didn't realize that lots of people just know how to be friends. So, but back to the topic of creativity.
No, it's perfect.
And so now I can see, so that's what got me thinking, right? So people always say how innovative and creative I am because of the things that I suggest. And so now being able to explain why I'm creative and how my brain works means that I can advocate for neurodivergent people and the need for us we have to think differently about people who think differently, right? And a lot of people who are autistic might have verbal communication challenges. So we might not know that they're very creative and innovative, and they could be the person to solve a global issue. But we don't know that because they have problems communicating verbally. So when we're talking about creativity and creative processes, I see a real need to ensure that we are adopting inclusive practices, right, to help neurodivergent people understand their creativity and how that comes about.
So being neurodivergent means you are creative, or not everybody?
Yeah, I would say not everybody.
Okay.
Because we have to be very careful, right? So I think we could say that in general, if you experience the world differently because you have different challenges or your brain is wired, then you could be creative. But it also depends on what we're defining as creative.
Totally. It just popped in my head that I just read, pretty basic, but creativity, you're not born with it. And I'm glad, because I didn't think I was born with being creative, but I want to be creative. But as you are describing a neurodivergent, I think even just obviously problem solving, it's part of it's being creative. So for someone neurodivergent, sorry, just to think differently, that's just being creative already. I can say,
yeah,
right? So
yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, being able to come up with a novel solution to a complex problem. That's creativity right there. It could be that you are an engineer and you think that creativity means painting and dancing and singing.
Totally.
But engineering, like, you have to problem solve all the time. You might be designing bridges or structures, different structures, and you have a set of constraints and challenges which require a level of creativity to come up with a novel solution to a previously unsolvable problem.
And for you, do you have already like a special or specific structure to probably you have very naturally, or you actually have to write it, or I don't know, to come out with to innovate with a new solution? I mean, do you have steps or a formula or something, or a secret that you would like to share?
I think the most important thing that I've learned is they have a name for it. I think it's incubation. Okay. Right. And so today's society, we are so obsessed with being efficient with our time and planning every moment of our day.
Ajá. Ok. Tengo que estar viendo a la cámara.
Oh, there we are. Sorry, lost me. And so we don't allow time for like doing nothing time. So we know that like Steve Jobs, he actually, this is according to popular theory, that he scheduled doing nothing time. And so these are times, and Charles Darwin did the same. These are times where you're maybe taking a walk and you're just reflecting and thinking about things. It's the shower thoughts, right? How many of us, or in the middle of the night, how many times you wake up going, oh my gosh, that's the answer. I can't believe I didn't see that. Because we have to allow time while we're doing stuff, like we're focusing on reading and learning and writing and doing things. Our brains are busy, and one part of our brain is busy, right? I think it's the default mode network, maybe. But then our brains have to like incubate and have time to make those connections, right? So fire things out in our brain does that connect with that? That's where dreams come from. We're making very random connections between things. And sometimes, most of the time it's garbage, but sometimes we wake up with, oh, that's the answer. And that's what happens when we have to give our brain this incubation time, this time where we just, like if I said to you, you should schedule 30 minutes every day to do nothing. You just sit on a bench and do nothing. You're not allowed to do anything. You're not allowed to look at your phone, anything. Would you say, oh my gosh, I couldn't do that?
Well, actually, it's funny because I had to make it part of my routine during the day or the week to allow myself exactly to do nothing. And do nothing is probably watching something you like where you don't have to think, reading a book, cooking, baking, something like that. But I'm conscious about it. I mean, I know about it. Not everybody. So now that you actually mentioned that, it's talking about the students here for us in university, we found, because they're bombarded with all this information constantly, they don't have the time. So for them to be creative, back to the topic, it's pretty hard. no matter which career, because I usually link my students from design. They're very creative, right? But for example, I teach English. So for them, sometimes you ask them and I don't know where they are. And maybe it's so, even for us as adults, just to put your phone down. I mean, that's actually, I think I would like to ask, that would be advice for everybody to how can you say that? Mm, to if you're wondering how to be creative, is actually do nothing, rest, or how would you word that?
So I think there's a couple of things here. In order to be creative, in order to come up with a novel solution to a complex problem, you have to establish a high degree of knowledge in that area. So when you're at university, this is the perfect time for you to start practicing creativity because you're taking in all this information all the time and you have different classes. Now, one of the tools that students can use is called it's a commonplace book. So in the time of Charles Darwin and other people, they all did this. The commonplace book is just one book, and it may be a Google document. I actually use an online tool called Roam Research, ROAM Research, and I put all my notes from everything all in one place. It could be a conversation I had with a friend. It could be reflections on the day. It could be what I'm learning in physics or economics or marketing. And then you use keywords. And what they used to do, Charles Darwin used to go back and read this book periodically and then see, oh my gosh, actually what I learned in that marketing course, it actually relates to this lecture we had in our physics course or our economics course. It allows you to make those connections, right? Now, my brain does it very easily already. But this commonplace book is one way to do it. And then the most useful, the most valuable thing that I have implemented, and I know what it's like to be a student. I mean, not that long ago, I was a PhD student, and I felt like I could not even go to the movies. Students would say, oh, I watched this movie yesterday. And I'd be like, how do you have time to go to the movies? Oh my gosh, it's so stressful, right? And there is no way, if someone had said to me, you need to schedule time to go for a walk and think about nothing, I'd be like, no way, that is not it. However, during COVID, I got a dog, and this dog needs walking every day. And I found that on those walks with the dogs, that's where I was making like my greatest insights. And so every day now, I stop what I'm doing and I walk the dog. I have 3 now. I only had 1 first. Now I have 3. Walk the dogs, think about nothing, because I know that a connection or an insight or an aha moment will come to me while I'm on that walk. And those walks have made me be able to work smarter, and faster. So when I return from that walk, you know what happens? Like maybe I took an hour out, but when I come back, I can work faster. My energy has returned. I can get things done quicker. If you try and slog all day without a break, you're not getting anywhere, right? So it's like, your phone, you have so many apps open all the time, and then it starts to slow down. And sometimes you have to shut down your phone or your computer to get it going again. We have to do the same thing with ourselves. If we try to keep going without a break, we're not going to be working very well, and it's going to become harder and harder. And drinking water. Drink water. A gallon of water a day. I'm an evangelist for water. Drink a gallon of water a day, and I will tell you your energy, you're not You're probably not tired, you're probably thirsty. Your energy and your capacity to learn will be so much higher.
I am with you. And so I have a question where that can be part of the answer, which what tools would you give to someone that can probably ask themselves, why I'm not creative? How can I be creative, right? Because like you said, usually we think being creative is painting, it's drawing, it's writing, but it's not just that. So so now we can say tool is to rest, to give yourself time to do nothing and to drink water. So just to make it short. So those are tools that everybody can have. That's what I mean. Okay. So
another thing, a lot of times the creative process starts because it's the problem solving approach is the first thing. We're trying to solve a problem and we're stuck, right? And so you can train your brain. It's just like running. You can train your brain as a muscle to keep an ear out, like be cognizant of when people are talking about the problems they have. And then because someone's always complaining about something, right? I wish there was this or that, or I was late because the buses don't run, or whatever. And some people write these things down in a list of all the problems that I've heard people complain about today, and then set yourself a challenge. Tomorrow, I'm going to think of 10 solutions to that problem. And you don't second guess yourself. Don't be like, oh, that wouldn't work. That wouldn't work. You just write whatever comes to your mind, right? And so you're going for quantity. You want to go for 100 ideas of solutions. And then out of that list of 100, there might be a couple that work. So when we start trying to think of solutions, we tend to say, that won't work, that won't work, that won't work. And then we end up with a blank piece of paper. We have nothing. But if we write down just anything crazy that comes to our mind, it's easier to find one that might work. Quantity over quality when you're trying to generate ideas.
Okay. And what can you say, or you have found about what are the main barriers that you can find in a creative process? Like you say just one right now, which is constantly saying, no, this is not going to work. What others have you faced or found in the communities you work with?
Another barrier could be the social effects, right? So like what I spoke about very early, and it's not just for neurodivergent people, but lots of people, that if you have a creative idea and maybe you tell the group of people that you with, maybe it's your friends, maybe it's your family, and they might say, oh, that's stupid, or that would never work. And then that's really hard emotionally to hear. You know, when someone tells you that your idea is stupid, it's very hard to take, right? And people who have, especially if you have ADD or ADHD, we know that lots of people with those conditions have what's called rejection sensitive dysphoria, which means you are super sensitive. Like if somebody says your idea is bad, you feel it on an extreme level, right? Like to your stomach, physically. So then what happens? What happens next time? You don't say your idea, right? When you're with that group of people, you don't tell them your idea because you had such a terrible experience last time. And so sometimes we can change our environment and the people that are around us, but it's not so easy. Like they might, someone might give the advice, oh, well, you need to get new friends. That's very difficult. It's not easy. But I would say that something to aim for would be to develop a sense of detachment from your ideas. So you could say, here's an idea I'm thinking about, and put it out there. And maybe people will say, that's stupid, that'll never work. And then if you can say, okay, tell me more. Tell me more about that. And how could it work then? Right? So instead of taking people's criticism of your ideas as, oh, well, my ideas are stupid and I'm not creative, or I should not carry on with this idea, take it as, oh, these are potential holes. And I'm going to ask this person, how could I fill it? Right? And when we put the challenge out to something, like if I said, so I have this idea that I'm going to start a business cooking foods from New Zealand. I'm going to have a bakery in Missouri, USA, and I'm going to make foods from New Zealand. And you might say, and yet it's stupid. No one's going to try foods from New Zealand. And I might say, oh, okay. Why do you think that is? And how could we then get them to try it? The minute you're a problem, your brain wants to solve that problem, right? So instead of walking away, I could say, how could we though? What would that look like? Then you're going to be engaged with it, right?
And when people have come to you, what makes them find out or realize they are neurodivergent or they have ADHD? Because it's not that easy for someone in an environment totally different. It's just, it probably just goes one way, like you say these examples where they feel down, they think they're totally different but not in a right way. And do you have people that have come out from those, let's call groups or families or communities or schools, where they're like, how can I put it? I mean, it's just, I'm trying to put in words. If your environment is totally different, just like your family, and it's hard for them to accept how different you think, how can they find out? I mean, I'm just probably, I don't know, thinking it's difficult. It's a difficult situation.
Oh, yeah.
So how to help them? How?
Yeah.
I mean, probably for me now, if I found a student that it's totally different to the rest of the group, and I'm like, okay, just she thinks more logical. That's why she's so different. But that's me. That's me. For someone else, this probably has a pretty square structure, and it's hard to think out of the box, or probably because the generations now, they're so different. So it's probably it's another topic, but I mean, how can you help them?
Right.
I don't know.
I understand, yeah, what you're getting at. And so, it could be like if you, and I tell students this all the time, you might have had an experience where you have a group project to do, and one of the students that you have to work with says some things that seem like really weird. Like, where did that come from? Right? And so, or maybe they're not they don't have social skills, or they're very direct. They just don't seem to fit in. What tends to happen is that the group will just start kind of shutting them out, ignoring them, not including them, give them some piece of the project to do. And it's just not a nice experience for anybody. So I talk a lot about when somebody says something that is like, seems like, where did that come from? That was weird. It might be because their brain has made connections so fast that they are 200 miles down the road of making connections between things, whereas you're still getting out the gate, right? You're still at your house. And so to be able to say, ask them, can you back up, tell me more about how you made that connection? Like engage them, ask them. And maybe they don't have verbal communication skills. Maybe say, would it be more easier for you to write it down and send it to us later, right? However, maybe you're that person in that group that you don't have those students who are understanding or aware, or maybe it's your family. Maybe, you think, oh, I don't know if I'm autistic, or maybe I have ADHD, and maybe you go online and you find some tool and it says maybe you have it, we're not diagnosing anybody here. But maybe your family says, oh, you're not autistic, or you don't have ADHD. Like, just stop it. There's nothing wrong with you or something, right? So then what then? What do you do then, right? And so there is definitely a lot of community out there, community on LinkedIn, especially young people. So younger people now are more out and proud and celebrate their autism. And so it's something that's a lot more talked about now. So there are a lot of resources that exist that didn't used to before, and a community, a proactive and positive community.
So you will say,
hi Hector.
Oh, hello. So you would say for them to, for example, probably start searching a little bit more about that. If they feel identify, look for communities out there too online. Okay. So for anybody who's listening or watching, that's probably what. Yeah. Very interesting topic. I mean, and as you're talking about, I just clicked one of my students, and totally, because they are so different, but when you get to know them, they have amazing ideas.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'll share this story. So over the summer, I taught an online course to neurodivergent high school students about entrepreneurial mindset. And the course is designed to bring these students to the attention of themselves. So we go through the different traits and characteristics and skills that researchers believe make up the entrepreneurial mindset. And then we talk about how your neurodivergence means that you might naturally have some of these traits or strengths.
Oh, okay.
And one of the students this summer was nonverbal. And so they wrote in the chat all the time. And the student was so smart and made the best connections. And everybody would be like, oh my gosh, that's a different way of thinking about it, and very insightful. And this is a high school student who one of the faculty on the course had a background in philosophy and said, wow, the concepts that you're talking about are, this is philosophy and stuff. It's very insightful, very smart. On the last day of the course, he decided he'd built up enough self-confidence and self-esteem that he said, I'm going to speak today. I want to speak out loud. It took a little bit of encouragement from the students. And when he spoke, and when he was chat typing throughout the semester and throughout the summer, he said, I get frustrated because nobody asks me my opinion when I'm in group projects. My teachers don't ask me what I think. I'm never asked for what I think, right? And so then, but when he spoke on the last day, he had a lot of trouble speaking and also articulating his thoughts. So once he started speaking out loud, he would get lost all the time. He couldn't carry on his thought because that physical act was interfering with the processes in his brain. When he types, he can think very clearly. When he speaks, he can't. And so I could see then, if he is in a classroom where the way that you communicate is by speaking, then people in that classroom, and potentially his teachers and potentially his own family, don't know how smart he is, right? Will have never realized how smart he is. And this is my point, is that people, some of our smartest, most creative, most innovative minds are shut off from fully participating in society because of their verbal communication challenges and the way that they behave. And some of, these could be solutions to complex problems that are sitting in their parents' basement playing video games because they are unable to get a job or unable to create, have anybody take notice of what's going on up here.
It is fascinating. It is a challenge. For example, for me as a teacher, because I see that in my classroom. And for me, I understand, but what about, for example, we do the speaking test, for example, no? And I just, it's hard for them to do it. But exactly, I don't know if this student knows, but if he writes, if we are playing games, it's, he has given the best ideas, very creative. So it's very, very interesting. I really like this topic. And I think you have gave very important tools for everybody out there to start being more creative, right? For someone, I just wrote down those questions because I found it's easier for everybody to block yourself and think, I can't. It's just about art, for example. And for those out there too who are feel different, probably now after they listen to this podcast, they might start searching about neurodivergency and ADHD. So I don't know if Hector would like to say anything.
Well, the reason I joined is because I wanted to greet Annette, because we've been in touch, and this has been such a hectic week with first week in teaching that I just finished an interview with somebody else, Fred Mansell, who's also in art, and I will be uploading that interview to you, put it into the portal. But I'm so glad that I didn't want to interrupt because I saw that you had a very good flow in your exchange. So it's amazing. Yeah, I find that my take, and I don't know if anyone wants to share something about this, is that developing creative thinking is counterintuitive. And that's because a lot of people think it's a cognitive ability, and it's as much an emotional ability as a cognitive ability. In other words, it takes a lot of courage to share the most original idea, because most people will laugh at it.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And so the course that I teach to neurodivergent people really focuses on them understanding that their original ideas have value.
Yes.
And so, yeah, but it takes, you're absolutely right, Hector. I think at the foundation of this, and this is something we don't pay attention to as much, we talk about the creative process and how to be creative, but we don't pay attention to how to develop creative self-efficacy.
Mm-hmm.
And also the kind of the detachment, so that I can put my ideas out there, and then your feedback, I can pick it up. I can say, that's really useful. I'm going to pick that up and look at my idea and try to improve it. Or that's not that useful. I'm going to leave that with you, right? I don't need to take all the. I don't need to take. That's never going to work. That's a stupid idea. I'm going to leave that with you. I don't need to take that home with me.
Yeah. So that's a degree of autonomy and self-confidence that needs to be created through experience and through by allowing students to be themselves. So that's one of the things that some schools try to do by the development of the will. Want to learn, and depending on the age, this whole thing about detachment, which is essential, it just takes a little bit of that maturity. So the key thing, I believe that people will get the maturity the more they practice. The first time, you will get hurt. The 10th time, you will not.
Yes. The only reason, so people my students say to me, oh my gosh, you're so chill and calm and stuff. And I'm like, you know what it is? I'm 50 and I'm tired. I'm tired. But when I was your age, I was getting upset every other day about not fitting in, or people not listening to my ideas, or, trying to figure things out. So, yeah, I have the luxury now of when you get old, you just start not caring about little things because you're exhausted all the time.
Yeah, and also you have developed a thick skin regarding certain things, because this is not the first time, it's your first rodeo. So that's what they say in Texas.
Yes.
So you get used to that type of thing. Sometimes what happens with people is that they tend to be too judgmental, and I find that it's easier to find flaws in ideas than to find the positive. And that is something that Alex Osborne and Sid Vance, they found in critical solving. That's why they use the affirmative judgment first. So look at the positive in the idea first. And then if you have any suggestions for improvement, you can bring it up in the shape of a question. So that's the best possible feedback, instead of judging things before the time. In fact, people, they don't understand the value and they are prejudging stuff. That's the big problem in daily interactions. So one of the things I find, I don't know where you are teaching, and that's what I find in my university, and we have 78,000 students here, so it's not a small population, is that a lot of people, they don't understand creative thinking yet. They still don't understand it. And that's because there is a bias in education towards knowledge. How much I know is not processes in what ways I think.
Yeah, you're right. And Victor, I haven't, ever since I heard you speak back in May, I think it was, I've consistently thought about how you said about the importance of asking questions. And I think you presented it in the framework of how to motivate somebody is by asking questions rather than giving advice. But it brings to the fore the importance of asking questions just in general, right?
Yes.
Like if we want to get somebody to understand how they might be creative, asking questions. But yes, this is a big kind of challenge for me in university when I'm fortunate enough that I generally teach entrepreneurship. This semester I'm teaching marketing, but I do it from a mindful learning perspective where I say these are some things that may make sense or may be the answer, but there are other things. But grading is tough, right? Finding a useful way to grade, especially when you're talking about creativity, and there's lots of books and resources that we can use to help us in this. I think grading for effort.
Yes.
rather than just I can regurgitate this knowledge. I can parrot it, memorize it. Like I don't have to memorize anything anymore. I have the internet. So
yeah, I completely agree. The thing I tell people, and you can try it out in your class, is ask your students, what subject do you take 1 year ago? And they will tell you, I took entrepreneurship, I took child development, whatever they took, that's fine, thank you. Okay. Now tell me what you remember about that class. And then ask them, so what does it tell you about the way we learn? And what I've understood, and that's why I'm still teaching, is because you can give value to people if you can shape or change, transform the way they are thinking so they can think in divergent ways, creative ways, become more effective thinkers for the rest of their lives. Not for only 3 months, but they have to be super interested in doing it because it's going to take hard work. Now, once they get there, and I was doing coaching on Zoom for 1 year with one person after they finish the class, still with the person. Why? It's because eventually this person went to South Korea, talks and says, well, whatever I learned, I've applied and it has made me successful. That is what it's all about. But again, to have people with that awareness and that interest takes a lot of effort. So anyway, I didn't want to derail the conversation, but I'm so glad to be able to share these couple of thoughts with both of you. We have gone just far beyond the normal time. So I think that we are more or less done. We have to stop. But thank you, Annette, for joining us. And thank you, Paulina.
Thank you.
Yes.
yeah, thank you.